which Bible translation should I buy? Which one should I use? Which one should I read? Which one should I study? That is the question we are going to be answering in this very, very wonderful video. My name is John Oyeniro and I'm the lead tutor at Adonai Bible Institute. Now, with over 25 English translations of the Bible available to us, this is kind of scary but exciting. Now, choosing the right Bible for you is very, very, very important. So the big trouble is this, and that is the question we are asking today. Which one will help me the most? Now, the big stumbling block for many people is trying to choose that version. It's a very, very, very big stumbling block. And then these Bibles come with all these acronyms: KJV, NIV, ESV, RSV, LT, NLT, and all of this. They could be daunting for many people. But you see, in this video, we're going to be helping ourselves to discover which is the best for us. Now, for us to go into this discussion very fully, we're going to look at some things. But before we get there, let me just say this to you very quickly. That the truth of the matter is that there is no one way to translate a book as voluminous as the Bible. There is no one way. So let's get that clear first of all. That there is no one way to translate it, a book that is as large as the Bible. Okay? And so please, we need to get that clear. Now, again, in this video, I'm going to use the word version as against the word translation. These two words, they mean different things. Some people don't even know that these two words do not mean the same thing. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to stick with the word version. Now, let's quickly go in and do some very good work in this video. Now, there are three kinds of translations that are available. The first one is the word for word translation. And then like the definition is word for word. This translation tends to interpret from the original manuscript word for word. So the concern of this version is not particularly to aim at the understanding of the reader. The understanding of the reader is not the goal here. The goal here is to achieve as close as possible the word for word intention of the original writer. So when these word for word translations come, their aim is to make you go as close as possible. Now, please understand that we cannot achieve 100% translation, but we can at least move close as far as possible to the original intention of the author in translation. So when you intend to do this, what happens is that you have to get a word for word translation, because your aim is to really understand word for word what the original writer meant. And so the word for word translation is okay. Now the question is this: who should use the word for word translation? Now, anyone who wants to move as close as possible to the original author wants to use the word for word translation. Now, the other thing about word for word translation is the fact that word for word translation has this very beautiful and unique literary style. You know, you have the thou, the shall, and all these old and beautiful. Some people even say it's spiritual when you say thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not judge. I know some people find it very spiritual, you know. Our older people, they find it spiritual, they find it captivating. So if you are somebody like that, then you actually want to do that. But one of the things you need to understand is this: if you're going to use a word for word translation, you must have other tools that will help you to understand ambiguous words in those translations. You must have a Bible study commentary, you must have a Bible dictionary, and other tools that can help you simplify, because the aim at this point is not to simplify. The aim at this point is to bring you close, word for word, to what the original author is intending for you to do. Now, there are some examples of these word for word translation. Chief among them is the King James Version. The King James Version is a classic example of word for word translation. So when you read the King James Version, the intention is to have something very close to what the original author means. Okay, that is what it is. Now, number two is the one we call the dynamic equivalent translation. the dynamic equivalent translation. And what do you have in the dynamic equivalent translation? It is a method of Bible translation that seeks to reproduce the original text using modern language and expression to communicate the message of the Bible. I'll take that again. So the dynamic equivalent is a method of Bible translation that seeks to reproduce the original text. Now, in this case, there is a reproduction of the original text. How? In a way that will be appealing, in a language that will be appealing, with expressions that will be appealing to the contemporary reader. So now, the goal is the message here. Unlike the word-for-word translation, which the goal is to move close to the original intention of the author. But now with the dynamic equivalent translation, what our goal will now be is, how does the reader or the hearer understands the message? So the goal is to look for words, expressions, and the right language to make the reader in the here and now understands it very better. So it is concerned about the basic meaning of the text in the contemporary world. So what does this word mean to us today? Unlike trying to understand what it means to the original author, that is the word-for-word translation. So it's now to like, what does it mean to me today as a modern reader? Okay, because the point of this of the matter is this: when we do dynamic equivalent translations, what we have is that there will be a loss, because now we are departing from what it is to the original author. But now we are looking and focusing on how the reader now will now be able to find expression and meaning with these Bible translation. And that is very important when you have the dynamic equivalent translation. So here you don't consider the original context, you don't consider the culture, you don't consider the figures of speech. Rather, you want the reader. These translations or these versions of scriptures want the reader to understand what it means in their own context. And that's what it means. So you have Bible versions like the NLT, like the Good News Translation, like the Revised English Bible, and all of those kind of translations, because the goal of this kind of translation is to make you as the reader try to understand the message in your context. Now, who can use this translation? The young people. The young people want the scriptures to be read to them in a way they can relate with. They want the Bible to be read to them in a way they can understand. And so these young people will most likely appreciate this kind of translation. And so there is that element of youthfulness. There is that element of vibrancy in this kind of translation. But the other part of it that you must understand is that once you begin to focus on the reader, you begin to lose quality in terms of what the author tends to achieve in all of this. Now, number 3, the third philosophy is seeking to combine both. Don't forget where we started: the word-for-word translation and then the dynamic equivalent translation. Now, there is this thing that we can do to try and marry both, so that we don't lose here and we don't lose there. Because like I said, let me recap again. When we do word-for-word translation, we lose the modern reader. The modern reader is not the goal here. The goal here is to move as far as possible, as close as possible to the original writer. Now, when we do dynamic equivalent, the goal now leaves the original writer and falls on the reader. And so because of these inadequacies on these two versions or translations, we now see, let us come to a midpoint. Let us reach a consensus on this issue. Let us come to a point where we can say, okay, this is what we can do to come to a consensus. And then we have what we call the optimal equivalence. The optimal equivalence. Now, proponents of this believe that we can get a balance between the word-for-word translation and the dynamic equivalent translations. So we can just strike a balance, okay? And then the NIV, that is the NIV, the New International Version, tends to achieve that. You understand? So the NIV is like a midpoint between the dynamic equivalent and the word-for-word translation. So now this is it. Which one should you now use? It depends on your situation. But all I need you to know is that your situation will not determine ultimately, if you're a preacher, what will happen to your congregation. You must strike a balance. There are some of you who are preachers and teachers of the word who have elderly people in your congregation, and then they might be tending towards the word-for-word translations. That's fine for you, for that audience. And there are those of you who are younger people who know that these word-for-word translation will not sync well or will not rhyme well with your congregation, and then you move to the dynamic equivalent translation. Now, both of you should understand that you must reach a consensus. Both of you must understand that you must not jettison the other. Our older men don't even want to hear the dynamic equivalent translation. Our younger men don't want to even hear the word-for-word translation, but that is wrong in themselves. What should you do? Find a midpoint. Find a balance. Now, it means that for some of us, especially the older folks, you have to just unlearn and then appreciate some of these newer versions because they will resonate more with your audience, that are now modern, that are more rational, and that are vibrant and youthful, so that you don't lose them. And then for our younger preachers and younger ministers of the gospel, you need to also appreciate the word-for-word translations so that you can get as close as possible to the original author. Now, if you want to strike a balance, the NIV strikes that balance for you. But if you think you don't want to strike a balance, you want to remain in your traditional positions, please remain there, but always seek and always be in line with what your audience will be used to and what will bless your audience per time. And that is what I call striking a balance and getting the best for you and your audience as you do the work of the gospel. I hope this has helped you so much. If you have comments and questions, please put it down in the comment section, and I will be so glad to hear from you, to read from you, and to enter into a very fruitful and wonderful discussion on this unending matter of what Bible version should I use. My name is John Oyeniro, and I'm the lead tutor at Adonai Bible Institute. I love you all. I'm going to see you very soon. God bless you.